Eisenbach, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. I am on the architecture faculty, and I'm the chair of the Keibel Gallery. And tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Ivica Bukvic, who's visiting us from Virginia Tech. And it is my pleasure because since I run the Keibel Gallery, we also have lectures associated with the gallery, and tonight is one of those lectures. Ivica has come to us via another colleague, Aki Ishida, who was here several weeks ago. Some of you may have had the chance to hear her talk, but if not, you'll see her work in the Keibel Gallery. And you'll also see a project that Ivica worked on with her, which was at the Smithsonian, and a project which he had a much greater part of as a collaborator on the cloud, which is at the end of the hallway. And it's because of the cloud and the collaboration with Aki that we were able to extend this celebration to include Ivica's work and to bring and welcome folks from Virginia Tech, to bring a number of students from Virginia Tech here to perform. So this visit and the gallery exhibition and the installation of cloud have been made possible by a few different partners, and often that's when the most interesting work happens here in the school and in the gallery. So the Keibel Gallery Foundation, the School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation as a group, but also the Honors College and Design, Culture, and Creativity, and I welcome those of you who are here, especially from DCC, and Krista, it's wonderful to have you here as well. And the Clarice Smith Performing Arts Center have been our partner as well. In addition, there have been several groups at Virginia Tech who have contributed. So Ivica is here tonight, and he's going to deliver a lecture entitled Fostering Creativity, Education, and Community Through Technology. And I'm going to introduce him briefly, and then we will get started. So, the art of multisensory researcher and artist Ivica Bukvic is driven by ubiquitous interactivity. Bukvic's output encompasses oral, visual, acoustic, electronic performances, installations, technologies, research publications, presentations, grants, and awards. His most recent work focuses on communal interaction, immersive data sonification and spatialization, and recontextualizing STEM K-12 education through innovative approaches to creativity and technology. Bukvic's recent awards include Architecture Lighting Design Award that was given in 2013, first place in the first International Laptop Orchestra Competition, Excellence in Research and Creative Scholarship Award, Teacher of the Week, Excalibur Award, Best Animated Short, Creative Achievement Award, and the 20th Anniversary Electroclips Composition Contest. So you can see just from his awards the range of work that he's involved with. Professor Bukvic's research has been funded by the National Science Foundation, private foundations, and corporate sponsors, and now you can add DCC and the Keibel Foundation to your list. Dr. Bukvic is currently an associate professor in computer music, the founder and director of the Digital Interactive Sound and Intermedia Studio, and the Linux Laptop Orchestra, otherwise known as L2ORC, or what do you guys say? LORC. LORC or TORC? I'll work on that. Institute for Creativity, Arts and Technology Senior Fellow, and a member of the Center for Human-Computer Interaction with a courtesy appointment in computer science. Following Ivica's lecture today, there'll be a gallery reception, which will be an opportunity for folks to talk with him a bit more. If we have time, we'll have some questions after the lecture. But I'd like to also bring everybody's attention to, if you're not already aware of, and if you can also let others know, that in the great space in the School of Architecture, our main space from 12:30 to 1:30, the Laptop Orchestra will be performing, and that's something people can just move in and out of and stay for the whole time or come for a portion. So during this busy time, it'd be great if you could take a break and join us. And then after that, from 1:30 to 2:30, the group will be led by Ivica. We'll be giving a workshop. And in this workshop, participants will learn basics of visual programming environment that's developed specifically actually to drive both the laptop orchestra through the Linux Laptop Orchestra and the Raspberry Pi computers, which are inside cloud. So there are spots. I think all the DCC folks have been signed up, but there are also some spots if there are any art and architecture students who are interested, and there's a sign-up sheet in the back. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Itzo, and I'd like to welcome the students from Virginia Tech and DCC, and please join me in giving them a hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Remy, for a wonderful introduction. Thank you to DCC, and Christy, and Jason, and everybody else who has played a role in bringing me over here. It's truly a pleasure to be here at UMD. So tonight, I'd like to share a little bit about my background, but also to touch upon this topic that is reflected in the abstract of this talk, which deals with this idea of a professionalist, the professional and the virtuoso, perhaps an exclusive kind of club, and the other group of us who are not necessarily professionals in any particular field, but want to engage in a particular field. So, where to begin? I guess I'll talk a little bit about my background and how I came where I came and what my passion and interests are. And I think, having looked at your DCC, it seems like there are a lot of interesting overlaps with what I'm particularly passionate about, and that is this disciplineless or transdisciplinary kind of approach to creativity. Looking at the DCC's sort of course offering, I look at very similar verbiage that I'm attracted to, which basically tries to capture discipline-agnostic approaches to creativity. So what I have for you tonight is this single slide. So this is either the shortest presentation you'll ever experience, or I don't know what else, how else I would describe it. But it does have a lot of embedded links, which I think might be convenient to kind of traverse the creative output. So I started out as a traditionally trained musician. I started out playing piano when I was 7.5 years old, and I did all this standard stuff that a musician would do, and I did it in Europe, where I grew up. And so my education was very much what I would refer to as Austro-Hungarian, and for those of you who are not familiar with that part of the world, that infers that basically teachers are a form of a deity, and students are basically worthless, and we are there to earn our keep. So there is a very different kind of culture there than there is in the United States. And so throughout that period of time, I was encouraged to obviously study all the classical and traditional kinds of approaches to music making and music practice, but I was strictly forbidden from considering anything that even remotely delves into contemporary technology. And so I would do my technology stuff on the side without letting my music teachers know, because otherwise I would get in trouble. And I've always been passionate about computers. I've always been passionate about technology. When I got my first computer when I was right about that age, 6 or 7, I remember programming first programs in BASIC and listening to the radio shows where they would actually broadcast programs that you could actually load into your computer. They were, at that point in time, just like our old 56K modems, they were just simply sound recording of binary data, which was really screechy, and it took forever to load. So I remember my first computer, I don't know if any of you remember it, this particular computer, but it's called the ZX Spectrum by Clive Sinclair from Great Britain. It was this tiny computer with 48 kilobytes of memory, and it took about 5 minutes to load a single application into it through a tape deck. And then, after 5 minutes, it would just say tape loading error, please rewind and try again, because I didn't adjust my azimuth on my tape deck. So those were kinds of beginnings, and I love that tinkering nature of technology that computers allowed us to delve into, this kind of open-endedness that really attracted me to it. And so in parallel, I continued exploring technology, and I continued to explore music. And it was not really until I got to the United States, really, that I got into a position where I could sort of marry the two without feeling apprehensive about it. Having finished what was known as music gymnasium in Croatia, and also having finished a technical gymnasium in parallel with that, which was mostly focusing on what we refer to as informatics, and we could probably more broadly define as computer science. I came to the United States, and here I was given an opportunity to pursue either engineering or music. And first I looked for engineering opportunities. That's what my father does, or what he did until he retired recently. And while I had some really wonderful opportunities to engage with, I was not particularly lucky in securing scholarships, which I was told was in part because there was an expectation to do co-oping in between the semesters, which would then therefore help offset the cost of participation. But me being a foreign student in the 90s, that was strictly forbidden, so you could not just go out and co-op. The expectation was that you would have to come up with your own money to cover the education. So that kind of fell through, and right when I was getting ready to give up about my education or continued education in the United States, a teacher of mine that I was taking piano lessons with the help of my host family that was hosting me at the time, suggested I should apply to a conservatory to do music. And I said, you know, well, I'm not interested in playing piano. I guess I could do composition. That seems open-ended enough, and that's something I would really like to do. And so this was sometime in March, and so with the help of, I guess, pulling some strings that my teacher did, we scheduled an interview, and pretty soon I was, facing an offer of a full ride, and it kind of took it from there. And so I finished all 3 degrees in the United States, my bachelor's, master's, and doctoral. And as I went through those degrees, my first epiphany was obviously marrying the technology and music, which is really exciting for me because those were the 2 passions that up until then were kind of orthogonal little tracks, kind of forbidden fruit. And then the second epiphany was really as I was approaching my end of my doctoral degree, which was basically realization that it is not just composition and necessarily music through technology that attracts me. It's also technology in and of itself and creative uses of that technology. So my doctorate really ended up being a combination of computer music and computer music programming, meaning developing software that deals with specifically music or sound creation. And after that, I've had some opportunities to teach at Oberlin College and other universities, and eventually I landed at Virginia Tech, where I'm currently right now. And what I was, I think, tremendously lucky is that I was hired at Virginia Tech into this so-called cluster hire, which was called Collaborative for Creative Technologies in the Arts and Design. I was one of the 4 faculty. One was in music, one was in visual arts, one was in computer science, and one was in communication. And we were sort of informally tasked by the provost to come up with creative, transdisciplinary kinds of projects that showcase and prove to Virginia Tech community that this is a valid transdisciplinary field. Little did we know that that involved a lot of dog and pony shows, which we ended up doing. And part of that reason was because we also were tasked to essentially serve as poster childs for fundraising for the new Arts Center. And we're tremendously lucky because roughly 9 years after I joined Virginia Tech, here we are enjoying a $100 million building, the first arts building on Virginia Tech campus, which has been predominantly a research-one institution focusing solely on engineering. And with it, this new Institute for Creativity, Arts, and Technology. And this is really something that very much is similar to what you guys have with the DCC, which I'm very much passionate about. I'm a rabid believer in transdisciplinarity, and I use that word not lightly because there is interdisciplinary, there is transdisciplinary, there is multidisciplinary, and so on and so forth. And each of those terms have a different connotation with, in my opinion and in my understanding, transdisciplinarity implying a convergence of multiple disciplines where the engaged parties walk away with newfound knowledge. They are transformed as part of that experience. And I would go in so far as to suggest that basically a collaborative production kinds of endeavors like producing a movie do not necessarily constitute that kind of transdisciplinary behavior. I use term production more than I use collaborative, transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary kind of endeavor, because I very much see that as basically one team doing something and throwing it at somebody else to do their component, usually soundtrack being one of the last pieces of the puzzle that come together. And so transdisciplinarity to me is very, very important. As part of this Virginia Tech experience, I've had a wonderful opportunity of shifting farther and farther away from music and more into this transdisciplinary field. And that was obviously very exciting for me because that was exactly what I was passionate about. But at the same time, it was also a bit of a rocky road because that made me kind of a black sheep of the music department. I did do my compositions, I did do my performances. That was obviously a part of the expectation of my tenure. But I've also done a lot of other things that did not necessarily account for the most core of the metrics of the music tenure. And as you may imagine, especially for those of you who are faculty in academic institutions, that did result in a lot of political friction. It turned out that basically university as a whole loved what I was doing, and my department was not sure what I was doing. And so I'm lucky to report that despite those hurdles, I was surrounded by very supportive faculty and colleagues who have in the end voted to grant me tenure. And here I am now, part of ICAT, a new institute that we have at Virginia Tech that actually is all about transdisciplinarity. This is a neutral ground where all the different disciplines can come together and faculty can engage in creative endeavors of whatever denomination or whatever disciplinary definition they want to use for it. As a matter of fact, I'm just like my colleagues in ICAT, I'm not particularly interested in what particular project can be classified as. We're more interested in what a project actually is or what it can do for us. And in that creative endeavor, as a result of that, I've went in various directions to satisfy my creative curiosities. So, as you'll see in a moment, I think my creative output is in many ways reflective of this interest and curiosity in various different things. So some of the examples that I can share with you is, for instance, let's start with forgetfulness. Forgetfulness is a project that basically I've done in collaboration with Denise Ivica, who is a poet, a wonderful poet at, I want to say University of Florida, or it's Florida University, I can't remember, one or the other. But basically, she has done these wonderful series of poems called Mobius poems, and I don't know how familiar you are with the Mobius strip, but it's kind of an infinite strip, looks like a figure 8. And so what she would do for her live performances, she would take this poetry, she would print it out on a long, essentially kind of a ticker tape it together, and then she would start reading it wherever she wanted to start reading it, and she would slowly go through it until she would arrive at the end that she believes is the end. So it was a kind of a happening, an experience of sorts. And so we spoke about this. We've been put in touch by Ed Falco, who is a very prolific writer, faculty member at Virginia Tech. You may know him. I think he has just served as a person who has done The Last Godfather that came out recently. But anyways, really, really interesting guy. And so he put me in touch with Denise Ivica, who has expressed interest in having her work somehow digitized. And so I started thinking about possibilities that entailed. And at that point in time, I was really interested in and I still am, in this thing called Unity 3D. Is anybody here familiar with Unity 3D? Fantastic. So it's a gaming engine and also an editor. It's a very powerful environment because it is completely platform agnostic. When you develop for one platform, transferring it to another platform is nearly seamless as clicking on a single button. And so I was messing with that for various other projects, including two that are listed here. One is Elemental and one is Forgetfulness. And I was trying to figure out, well, maybe I should set this poem inside of a gaming engine. And as a result of continued conversation with Denise, that's exactly what it ended up being the case. So what I would like to do is I would like to show you what that really looks like. So I'll do my obligatory Alt-Tab into the right place. And so what I'm going to show you is essentially iteration of this that actually runs in a browser. And there's this, oh, I got to do the lecture thing. I forgot to press that, sorry. So what you see here is essentially gaming engine running in a browser. I'll go full screen. Hopefully you'll see this. Perfect. And so what happens is that basically I create a kind of a constellation or a galaxy of little particle generators that essentially accentuate that Mobius strip. And as you travel this Mobius strip, you essentially experience the poem as Denise Duhamel envisioned it. And so I'm going to use my arrows to start traveling throughout this. And what happens is that as you go through this, Mobius strip path or expressway, and now you can kind of see the beginnings of the Mobius strip as it kind of comes up and then slowly swerves around and comes back. And what happens is that as you traverse it, through a mere chance, as you hit certain keywords, you'll hear other parts of the soundscape kicking in. Because it is random, it could end up being that I'm going to be now traversing half of this Mobius strip and you will not hear any change in it, which is just the unfortunate downside of randomness. But what happens essentially is that as you read the poem, therefore, you experience a soundscape. There are certain parts of the soundscape where you basically can also stop and just listen to that particular part of the soundscape. So at one point, this particular poem is actually focusing on an Alzheimer's patient. And so it kind of lists all the awkward things that you would imagine being awkward without knowing that this is an Alzheimer's patient. And eventually, mentions the poem mentions the person not recognizing Jesus. And so when you kind of stop there, you can kind of almost hear this long piece that unfolds on its own. And so far, I'm not having much luck of hitting any of the hotspots, so I'll just kind of keep going for a moment, and if we don't hit it, I'll pause it, and I'll strongly encourage you to go and explore this later on your own if you like. But the whole idea is that this is a sort of immersive journey that you experience a poem by an artist inside of some kind of a gaming environment where the duration of the overall artistic experience is completely dictated by you as the participant. And this is nothing uncommon. This is something that happens in every interactive installation you would ever go and experience. But I was drawn to that. I was drawn to that indeterminate way of approaching music structure, or not just music structure, but also visual structure as well. So again, this is available online, so you can always go there and check it out and experience it as much as you want. But that's one of the projects I kind of found to be worth sharing maybe with you, to show some of the sort of disparate different approaches that I've done in my creative process so far. Another project that I've done that involves Unity 3D, which actually deals more with the communal interaction, is a project called Elemental. This is a project that was actually commissioned for the grand opening of the Arts Museum of Western Virginia, or Southwestern Virginia, not to be mistaken for West Virginia. Apparently there's some kind of a distinguishable divide that people want to make between those two. And I don't want to go into details about that. But there were several pieces that were basically hosted in this shared space, and one of which was this piece Elemental. Now, I could play a video of that, but I think it's kind of pointless because the experience is all about sound, and we don't have a multi-channel diffusion in here to actually experience the value of that. The piece was basically structured by having 12 speakers in the ceiling and had an infrared tracking system designed in the MaxMSP programming language. Is anybody here familiar with MaxMSP? Keep your hand down. These are my students. By the way, actually, a small segue. I only have 2 students here, not because nobody likes me out of my group, but because all of them will be coming at different times today and tomorrow. This happens to be actually spring break for my students, so they actually, I really appreciate their sacrifice of, using 2 days of their time from the spring break to be here with you guys, and hopefully, if you can join us tomorrow for performance, I hope you'll find it to be engaging and perhaps thought-provoking as well. Anyway, small segue. So going back to the Elemental, this visual programming environment, MaxMSP, which is very similar to what we'll be working with tomorrow, was used to essentially create a kind of a motion tracking system that tracks individuals in space. And as the individuals walk, their walking was sonified by these sloshing sounds of water, as if one is wading in a knee-deep water. And I don't know about you, but I find that particularly therapeutic. When I'm in a relatively calm sea, And if I'm in the waist deep water, I don't want to get out. It's just really comfy. I just want to stay there and enjoy the wonderful calm water. And so to me, there was a very meditative aspect of this. So the technology was essentially used to retrofit a space so that you can walk through it and feel as if you're wading through the water. However, if it was just that, I would feel very much like I built a glorified light switch. I do something and the room responds. But where I feel that technology really has a wonderful opportunity, in addition to enhancing spaces like that, is to foster this notion of communal interaction. So in this case, what happened is basically every time you walk through this space, the assumption is that this space would be populated at all times with at least several unsuspecting strangers who would be there just to experience the art piece itself, not necessarily be interested in interacting with others inside of the space. And I was particularly drawn to the idea that I wanted to have those individuals interacting with each other as a result of their experience of this installation. So what would happen is that if a person would go in there, which depending whether you're on the West Coast or on the East Coast, people could come in there, and if you were on the East Coast, they might go in there and just walk through it for about 30 seconds and walk out. If you're on the West Coast, and I'm sorry, I'm here like typecasting people, but you'll take that as a joke rather than some kind of a derogatory statement. But if you're on the West Coast, people could go in there and then you could just chill for an hour there and just listen to what's going on, right? So it's kind of like a New York versus, I don't know, San Diego kind of mentality, right? And so the idea is that if you go in there and you have this brief experience, my expectation or my hope was that basically you would get what's going on, you would say, hi, I got it, pretty cool, and you walk away. And hopefully you would have liked it. I mean, there was nothing there necessarily that would be offensive or noisy or in any shape or way obtrusive. However, akin to a virtuosity that develops over time, like when learning to play an instrument, I also wanted to reward those who took their time and stayed in that space longer. And so in this case, what would happen is that as people would walk through the space, they would generate these waves that would ricochet against the walls, and they could even trace it by listening to it. They would see nothing other than hear what they hear. And what would happen is also that if two waves clashed against each other, new sonic elements would be introduced, almost like what I would refer to as oral fireworks. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to see unsuspecting strangers uncover this little virtuosic element, if you like, even though that's a bit of a stretch in terms of using that term for this purpose, and then engage in an unsuspecting discourse that would have not necessarily been possible otherwise, maybe because they were introverts or maybe they're not feeling comfortable approaching strangers. So I wanted to use the installation as a glue for connecting people together. And I've seen people who would go in there and do the superpower kind of stuff, like the Street Fighter thing, and then we do this and away we go, and then the other person would do the same, and then they would clash and we'd hear this interesting firework coming out of it. And some people really got a kick out of this. And I felt like that was a really interesting way of using technology and all these wonderful things that we have at our disposal today to do something that's actually quite human, which is just communicating with each other, particularly in today's society, which is becoming increasingly insular. I think I don't have to elaborate upon this, but I think it's needless to say that even if you're in public transportation, most people will be doing this in front of their phones, completely oblivious to what's going on around them. I think it's nice to use art and technology and creativity to pull people out of that, just like the same art, technology, and creativity have pulled them into those technologies. Kind of fight fire with fire, if you like. Another project I want to share with you, and this one actually has a video, is OperaCraft. So, how many of you are familiar with Minecraft? Yes, awesome. Yeah, to me, Minecraft is a fascinating technology because I have two children, and basically, this is the first time. I grew up with video games. I used to be an avid gamer until I started having family and job, and now I don't have time, even though I would love to play video games all the time. But the idea is that, I completely appreciate a good video game. And to this day, I still buy video games. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with this thing called Humble Bundle, where you go online and buy video games. I buy them and I'm building this huge cachet of video games because one day I'll play them all. And I think I have about 200 video games. I haven't played a single one yet, but the day will come. The day will come. But anyways, until then, you know, I obviously give this to my kids and they play with it. But Minecraft is a real outlier because this is the first time in my life I've seen people not anymore play video games, but they actually go online and watch YouTube videos of other people playing the video game. And that is a whole new level of crazy, or awesome, however you're going to look at it. So I would call Minecraft like as close as you get to a game that you snort. You know, it's just that addictive. And so, so yes, I got Minecraft for my kids, and we messed with it. And I admit I played it a little bit, and it was really fun. I got killed by one of those creepers that really got me angry. But anyway, so the idea is that we had Minecraft, and at one point I had one of my colleagues approach me with this idea. You know, I would really like to teach kids this appreciation of opera, right? How can we do this and make it, you know, attractive to little kids who may not necessarily be attracted to music at all, let alone opera? And so I started thinking, you know, what if we took Minecraft, we hacked it, which a lot of people have already done, and somehow retrofitted it so it serves our purpose of creating an online opera. I'm thinking, here are the kids who can design their sets. Here are the kids who can design their own costumes. Here are the kids who can design their own libretto. And with our help, we can even help them with the musical parts because, again, it was a question of titration. How much can we fit within the scope of the project? And then I went a little further out on the limb and basically said, I want to have some kind of speech recognition so we can actually have live singers singing the opera arias, and based on the signal analysis of the mouth movement, animate the characters in the game as if they're moving those mouths. Now, Minecraft, you know, has about 8 pixels reserved for mouths. So, you know, you don't have that much of a flexibility in terms of expressivity. So we settled with a fairly simple algorithm. But what we ended up with is essentially a mod of Minecraft that allows you to do a real-time Machinima or Machinima production. How many of you are familiar with Machinima? Is it the right pronunciation, Machinima or Machinima? Anybody knows?
Machinima.
Is it Machinima? Okay. Yeah, it's basically a movement where people use common video games and their engines to create movies, right? So they use live actors in there, and essentially, you know, don't do the storyline of the video game, but they essentially repurpose it for their own needs. So I wanted to recreate that in Minecraft. And the challenge of Machinima is that basically, while a lot of video games give you ability to have some level of interactivity inside it, to have a true immersive form of interactivity, you usually have to resort to something like Gary's mod, which is a mod for Half-Life, where you can really do all kinds of crazy facial expressions, except it's not very efficient because it's not real time. So it becomes kind of almost like a character rigging kind of task. And so I wanted to kind of bestow the users of this environment with tools that are necessary for real-time production of theatrical kinds of things like an opera craft. And so what we ended up with is multiple camera views where you can basically switch between the camera views in real time. We came up with a sort of a instant scene switches, which is basically nothing more than a glorified teleport, right? We came up with the transitions between the scenes. We obviously came up with animated mouth movements and some limited hand gestures, because after all, Minecraft does not necessarily have that much to move around. You have kind of 2 stubs that are your arms and 2 stubs that are your legs. And so using those as an opportunity for artistic expression. And this afforded us some really interesting questions that then, you know, provided opportunities for further research and further funding opportunities. So here I'll show you a little excerpt of our OperaCraft premiere, which premiered, oh geez, it must have been at least a year and a half, if not longer now. But what was really interesting is it was presented in our space in the Cube, which is actually, this is also an image of the Cube, which is equipped with 145 speakers. I can talk about it in a moment. But it was premiered in that same space before the speakers were put in. And we could fit inside there probably no more than 150-ish people. And of course, we were sold out, mostly with kids and parents, although our pros came there as well, who really liked it a lot. But what was interesting, we also live broadcast the whole event, and we had 30,000 viewers online, which was mind-bending because we never expected there would be such an interest. And it seems that basically there was a huge contingent of viewers coming from Germany for whatever reason. So it seems like Minecraft is really popular in Germany. So here what I want to show you is a video of that, and actually I already have it in my browser, so just bear with me for a second. Here we go. So hopefully this will just play without any problems.
You heard what he said. Let's go ask him for help.
What?
So this is all live, performed live.
Emperor X. Emperor X.
Here's our best chance for help.
He is.
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I don't believe it.
He will help us. Fight all and fight them.
I've told you the future's underground. We learned that 14 years ago. I told you the future's underground. We learned that 14 years ago.
So that's just a little excerpt, but hopefully it kind of gives you an idea of how things work together. And most importantly, there are 6 individuals, each controlling one of the characters. Singers were singing, so they were patched into those characters' mouths so they can move the way they want to move. But the characters are animated. Their arms are animated by little kids. These are all middle school kids. There are a few high school kids, but they designed the entire sets. They designed the characters' costumes. They designed the libretto. So they went to all these steps and created this kind of an experience. And then we also had this engine that ran in the background where basically we had stage notifications that only went to the actors so they knew what's coming up next, where they need to reposition, what they have to pay attention to. And then there was another one for subtitles. As you've seen, there are subtitles under the actual play. So, for this project, oops. So, in that project, I did mostly programming. I did no music whatsoever. Actually, one of my colleagues had arranged the music by taking excerpts from the classical repertoire and repurposing it based on the libretto. So you've heard a little bit of Mozart there in these particular acts. There's also tornado simulation, which talks about, and I'll talk about this very briefly because I really want to get to this side faster. And I will not talk too much about the cloud because you've experienced that probably through Aki's presentation already, and I will get to talk a little bit more about it tomorrow as part of the workshop. Suffice to say that basically that particular project is perhaps the most ambitious one of the community engagement because of the way how we allowed individuals to program the vessels and make them behave the way they wanted to make them behave. So each of the vessels in the original premiere were programmed by the community members as part of a 60-minute workshop. And what to me was very fascinating is that we were trying to design a programming environment that you can engage with within 20 minutes and get it finished. So you can create a sentient kind of vessel that behaves in a particular way. And so we had kids as young as 6 or 7 years up until, I think there was a couple there, it must have been at least 70 plus. And it was really fascinating to see them all succeed in this process within less than an hour, including the planting of the final vessel. So I'll briefly touch upon the tornado simulation. This is something that we've done very recently, again, with the new speakers that have been positioned inside of the cube. I'm particularly interested in spatializing data, or what we refer to as big data. So just like you can study a lot of data visually by having lots of screens, we can also do that by hearing. In some ways we can do it better, in some ways we can do it worse. But suffice to say that when we hear spherically, we hear all around us. We don't just hear forward or side, we can hear above and below and all the other directions. This is part of the evolutionary protective mechanism, so we can hear the bus coming and running us over unless we take an evasive action without having to actually see it. So for today's simulation, we've been designing now, or I've been focusing on designing a set of tools that allow us to move sounds across the different speakers. And as you might imagine, this is a little bit more complicated than it might seem initially because it requires a lot of data to be pushed. So I would call this very much like a CS task, not very much related to music necessarily, other than the fact that you will be playing some sounds eventually from those speakers. In this final simulation of the tornado that we staged as part of this collaborative project with Geography, who is interested in studying the tornadoes themselves, we've had a simulation that, according to my calculations, and I'll show you a quick screen here so you can see how that looks like. This is kind of how the visuals of the particular tool look like. This is the visual programming environment, Max programming environment. We've had essentially, and this is pointless to play right now because it will just play from 2 speakers, so what's the point of playing it? But when it's played across the 128 speakers in that space, the system was pushing 1,011 channels of audio in real time with sub-11 millisecond latency from the moment of the event being onset to the moment when it was actually being spit out from the speakers. Accounting also for the speed of light in the process. What that means is basically each channel of audio requires 48,000 flow point values per second. So if you multiply that by 1,011, you get actually a monstrous number of data points that the computer has to calculate and spit it out in under 11 milliseconds in order for this simulation to be successful. And simulation was very immersive, so if you ever have an opportunity to come down to Cube, I'll gladly play this for you. It is also a little bit gut rattling, as you might imagine, with that many speakers playing. But it gives you a very, very disturbing, almost, kind of impression of what it feels to have a tornado run through a house. And most recently, this was actually showcased on the Weather Channel, where I forget the 2 gentlemen who are like the big guys on the Weather Channel, but they came to Cube and broadcast live from the Cube, showcasing not only our what we call head-mounted displays and the visual immersion of the tornado, where they could walk through the tornado, study from different angles, but also shows this rendition through sound. And I was very much amused when the lead person mentioned, sort of as a comment, after they played this sound of, or this simulation tornado, he mentioned something to the effect of, these are the sounds you would never want to hear. And immediately got this idea, if you know how every composer has their website and they have quotes from different, New York Times, that this is the most magnificent piece, this music was fantastic. I really am tempted now to put like site like that, and I would just say, these are the sounds you would never want to hear, and that's, that would be the only comment I would have on my, and then of course cite the important person that is in charge of that. So those are the kinds of things that I wanted to share with you in terms of immersion and communal interaction. this is really the area that I'm most passionate with, and I don't know how we're with time. It's 5:57, so we should be wrapping it up soon. But this is the laptop orchestra, Linux laptop orchestra that you will get to experience tomorrow. And this is the project that has captivated most of my attention in the last 5+ years. And it deals with this notion of, I want to bring music to everybody. Not just to, and I mean by bringing music to everybody, to allowing everybody to engage in the music process, music making process. We live in a society which is so heavily slanted towards so-called STEM disciplines that everything else has been lost in the wake. And I do not believe that we can create well-educated, well-rounded, well-motivated, well-creative scholars who have not tasted a little bit of everything. And music in particular is an interesting aspect, but it is not limited just to that. I'm just as interested in visual and any other form of creative process which is not hindered by the pre-existing rules and regulations. To give you an example, if you're going to be studying something in the area of physics, you start out first with the pre-existing rules and regulations. You say gravity is 9.82 meters per second square. Temperature is, body temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and so on and so forth. You basically create a list of things that are known, and then you work within those parameters. Artists and people who are creative in these open-ended disciplines, they don't start with that. They start with the idea of, well, let's see, I have completely blank slate. How should I limit my creativity so I don't hit the writer's block? Well, maybe, how about we have gravity going up every Thursday, and body temperature will fluctuate anywhere between 0 and 3,000 degrees. Those are the kinds of rules we set up in order to be creative in the arts. And I think for somebody to be truly thinking, to use the cliche, outside the box, I think they need to have a taste of both. They need to have the discipline of a scientific kinds of rigorous research that is necessary to bring complicated concepts to fruition, but I also need to be capable of really thinking outside the box, to again refer to the cliche term. So, laptop orchestra is a concept where we want to bring anybody to the music making process. Over the years, we've had students from all over the campus, and I'm particularly proud of the fact that really, truly, most students are coming from different backgrounds. So it is not uncommon that we have as many majors represented as there are students in the program. It is a complete elective, so therefore students who go there, they're there out of their own volition. And what we do is, we make music with laptops. We use Wiimotes to capture human gesture. We use Tai Chi as a choreography to drive that gesture, because none of us are dancers or we know what we're necessarily doing, and we discovered fairly early on when you flail around with your hands using Wiimotes, sometimes those gestures can look quite offensive. So, we have to make sure that we have some kind of control environment. And Tai Chi is wonderful because it gives us that angle where, first of all, gestures are fairly easy to recreate. It is very hard to be bad at Tai Chi, but there's of course still a gradation between that you're doing it okay and you're doing it marvelously well. It also has other implications. There are some really interesting mind and body implications of practicing Tai Chi. There have been studies done where basically people who have done Tai Chi practice before doing an exam have done better on exams significantly and consistently than the ones who haven't. So we are incorporating pieces of mind and body practice. We're talking about collaborative music making using laptops. We're exploring what technologies we want to use to make that music within those confines. And then also we have this component of K-12 education. And in there we're trying to expose kids to making music using laptops. We're using technology as an excuse to get them all fired up about that. And using this, I think, really exciting mix of technology, computer science, engineering. These are the speakers that kids helped us fashion, which are made out of Kia salad bowls. So they've done some soldering, they've done some building, they've done some programming, they've done some music making, they've even composed their own pieces, they performed their own music, and all of that is shrink wrapped in something that kids love to do. So this photo actually reflects activity that we've done with the Boys and Girls Club of the Southwestern Virginia, a partnership that we have had now for almost 5 years. So that's where I'm really passionate about, and this really brings me to my punchline of this talk, which unfortunately, because I'm running out of time, I will not have enough time to necessarily explore in great depth. Well, maybe we can revisit this after the presentation or address it through your Q&A. is that, we live in a society where, because of continued exploration in great depth in these different areas, we've developed professionals in each of our areas. So we have professional musicians, many of which are supported through academia. We have professional visual artists, we have professional architects, and so on and so forth. And these are the individuals who are at the very forefront of their discipline. Unfortunately, some of those leaders are also very territorial about their leadership. So to them, you're either a professional or you're not, or you're a dilettante. And so as a result, we've seen people who embrace laptop orchestra or many of the other projects that are listed as a great opportunity to broaden your creative palette, if you like. And we've seen those who basically say, well, this is not a real thing. How can you call this music? This is nothing more than a guitar hero on steroids. Sure, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but the bottom line is that this is engaging individuals who may have not had otherwise exposure to these kinds of opportunities in a kind of a holistic way, exposing them to the notion that creativity is not delineated by our perception of silos or siloed nature of disciplines as we perceive it in most of the traditional ways of how we do higher education and arguably other levels of education. But creativity is unhindered, it's open-ended, and it manifests itself in any and every way possible, and most importantly, in the ways that are most absolutely necessary for the specific projects to take to reach their point of fruition. In other words, I would challenge anybody here or outside to say that when a child is being creative and they're drawing something, that they're going to tell you, I'm doing visual arts right now. I don't think they care. What they're doing is they're being creative and they want to do something creative. And if that's the case, then we have not only an opportunity, but we have a duty within the higher education to explore this as a central and focal area. And I think that is attested with the creation of A2RU Alliance, which I believe DCC is part of. Also, the ICAT is, and Virginia Tech is a part of, and it's a growing trend. It is not a fad, it is something that is happening right now, today, and it is answering questions not only that are pertinent today, they're also questions that are critical to our future. And so I think this, to me, all tells me that basically transdisciplinarity, to me, is the most important component of my creative output. If you want me to be classified as a musician, fine. If that makes you feel comfortable, I'll be fine with that. If you want to classify me as some kind of glorified visual interactive artist because of forgetfulness, I'm fine with that. Whatever you feel, titling me as, I'm fine with that. To me, that is not important. What is important to me is that I'm passionate about what I'm doing or what I'm about to do, because that's the only guarantee that I have that I will do the best job possible in that area. So, anyways, that really, this has been a lot about what I've done in the past, which sort of set the stage to the idea that, transdisciplinary to me is really, really important. But real challenge, I think, where we're facing right now, particularly in higher education, is breaking these pre-existing structures apart, like the siloed natures of the higher education, and also talking about the ways how these new fields that are emerging, these transdisciplinary fields, are requiring just as much depth as the original traditional silos. And this is the place where I'm most passionate about. This is where I have a great opportunity and honor to be a part of as part of the ICAT. And I firmly believe that that's not only the future, but also present of our higher education. And with that, I will close because I am 6 minutes over, and I apologize for that. And thank you very much.